Hello everyone, Mr. McTidge here. I think it would be disingenuous for me to say that I have a favourite album. There's such a broad variety of music that I listen to and love for different reasons, to the point that I find what they each achieve difficult to compare to one another. Like, how could I possibly compare the rich, emotionally evolving harmonies of Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto to Program Music 1 by Kashiwa Daisuke, where its appeal is in how it finds ways to constantly tread between the dimensions of chaos and consonance. That being said, if a gun was put to my head and I had to pick one album as my favourite, I would probably pick Kid A by Radiohead. When I wrote the script for my video Why Kid A is such an outstanding album, I wanted to make a level-headed analysis on the fantastically unique songwriting feats that Kid A achieves and its use of abstractions to make a compelling and interesting narrative, because I genuinely believe it is one of the most unique and successfully executed albums in those respects. And I think that with plenty of analysis and evidence from the songs, I have done it some justice in that video. But to me there is another side of Kid A, as I find that I relate to it on a very personal level, which I wanted to keep separate from my more objective analysis in my other video, so I thought I would make a retrospective log recording my evolving experiences with Kid A. Everything in Its Right Place was actually my first Radiohead song. I was around 12 to 13 years old at the time and Spotify had only recently come out. I wasn't exactly super passionate about music at this time in my life, but I was open to trying new musicians, and one of my few friends at school, Alistair, said that I should check out Radiohead. So I opened up Spotify, scrolled through and picked a Radiohead song at random that sounded pretty cool. And thus I had listened to Everything in Its Right Place. I then proceeded to stop listening to Kid A and started listening to OK Computer instead. Obviously I had yet to mature as a listener of music. I didn't necessarily dislike Everything in Its Right Place at the time, but obviously it just did not click with me. It may have been, I don't know, a year or two later that I gave Kid A another try, and again, I don't think I was really mature enough to grasp onto the abstract narrative and lyrics, but I think I did get a deeper appreciation from what the album does musically, and with that the National Anthem became my favourite Radiohead song when I was about 14 years old. In my other video I talk a little bit about how we're given cues to treat the brass section in the National Anthem as voices, and that gave me such amusement at that time in my life, because I had a really rough time at school, because I am a deeply, heavily introverted person and I do have difficulty being sociable and making friends, but according to school rules we were all forced into the dinner hall at lunchtime, which was it was packed like sardines in a crushed tin can, and there were just so many obnoxious loud people in my school. It was unbearable. I couldn't stand it at all, and the National Anthem gave me some kind of comfort throughout that. I could just imagine these obnoxious people with heads like trombones, and I did get some kind of kick out of that. I eventually learnt that I could actually get a music pass and avoid the lunch hall altogether, and that saved me so much of my mental health when I was around 15 to 16 years old, and so I started just not having any lunch and going straight to the music practice rooms where I'd spend my break times at the piano teaching myself how to play, and that's kind of when Kid A dropped off my regular listens as I focused more on pieces that I wanted to learn on piano. It wasn't until I went to sixth form college that the true catharsis of the album really hit me. It became very obvious to me that I wasn't socialised properly. At the very start of sixth form, they would do a few icebreaker activities, which of course everyone found awkward because, you know, we were 16-year-olds, but very quickly everyone would find their groups and I would very naturally find myself in the corner of the room just sitting there by myself. I was socially anxious. I couldn't bring myself to talk to people. I became a little scared of people, really, and they became monsters in my head. People were nothing more than vessels that had 10 times the potential to harm me than they did the potential to be my friends, which I understand now was a warped perspective that I'd gained from my experiences at school, but it still seriously affected my ability to just be open and connect with people. The only vessel I wanted an emotional connection with was a musical instrument. I guess it also affected me that I knew I was different to everyone else as well. Everyone else seemed to know how to navigate each other, whereas I was stuck terrified that what I might say would make me look like a fool, or that my lack of confidence when saying it would be like blood to a piranha. And then sixth form enforced a rule that food could only be eaten in the canteen, which of course was not good for me. I couldn't continue eating in the outside area where I found a bit of peace to myself. And so what did I do? At the end of the second floor of one of the buildings was the psychology department, which didn't have a huge amount of footfall, but for some reason had a ludicrously large toilet area having about 12 or so stalls. So I went to the second furthest one that looked like it had never been used, locked it, put the lid down, sat down and ate my sandwich there, and I hated myself so much. It might have been that very evening, or not long after that, I listened to Kid A again, and I was breathtaken with how it was the only thing that captured what being in my situation was like. Like, I had tried and failed to get into emo and other such, shall I say, more blunt genres of music that try to capture anxious emotions, but only by putting it into the abstract like how Radiohead did with Kid A was I really able to truly connect and get that catharsis that I needed out of the music. How to Disappear Completely became my favourite Radiohead song, and it still is to this day. There really isn't another song quite like it. It's a fantastic composition, as I laid out in my other video, but for me personally, it just gave me that something to fall back on like nothing or no one else could. From then on, I got to know the album incredibly well, and I started to understand all of the tracks that previously went over my head, like Morning Bell, Tree Fingers, and the opening two tracks as well. And it even superseded In Rainbows as my favourite Radiohead album. I started to understand the complex narrative being wound and why the abstractions employed in the album work in the way that they do. And so the album in Radiohead's discography that was infamous for being difficult to grasp and getting your head around became an album that I knew intimately, both for its musical features but also in terms of its emotional complexity. And it's because of that that I hope that I have done Kid A some justice with my analysis on why I think it's an outstanding album musically. I understand that putting this video out there might open the door to criticism, saying that I would be biased in favour of it given my personal experiences with it, but just given the nature of Kid A, I think it takes someone who knows the album intimately to really piece it all together, and I think in that video I've argued my case well with clear logic and examples. That being said, I could have easily done a full 2-hour commentary on every little detail I thought was interesting about Kid A, but that would have guaranteed that no one would have ever listened to it, so I tried to keep that video focused on the most pertinent elements relating to the narrative of the album and the use of abstractions, which of course meant cutting out things from the video to keep it focused. I kind of feel guilty for not mentioning the guitar line in the chorus of Optimistic. The scalic rise into the downward arpeggio is such a great auditory metaphor for the lyrical evocations of futility. And then there's the drum beat in Idiotic, which I think is so incredibly important to the fabric of the song, because it bridges the gap between York's cold vocal delivery and the intense feverishness of the meaning of the song. You have the constant tk-cats, tk-cats, tk-cats beat, which represents the coldness of the song. It's constant, it's reliable, it's always inescapably there, and intermittent with it you have the bass drum, which underneath the other drum part sounds like an irregular but tense heartbeat, and it's something that comes and goes during different parts of the song, which highlights the anxiety of the emotion within the lyrics. It's a constant feature throughout the second verse, where the anxiety and the fast-paced lyrics are at their highest, but aren't as frequent during the choruses, where the anxiety is less heightened. And that's where I think I'll leave it, because I don't feel like editing another half-an-hour video this week. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my personal experiences with Kid A. If you've had any personal experiences with this album, then please let me know what they were. If you like me doing more personal takes as well as the more serious music analysis, then please let me know as well, and I might do more of these kind of vids alongside my more rigorous analysis. But for now, stay awesome.